that God is standing upon each and every one and is well aware of every thought, speech, and action. So good evening, good afternoon, everyone. And we are holding between Yud Gimel and Yud Daled Menachem Av, the eve of Yud Daled. And we are zoche to begin the 11th volume of Tanya, Baruch Hashem. We covered together 10 volumes. And now we're beginning the 11th one, which will cover from Nun to the end of Sefer Shel Beinonim. And right now, I think Rabbi Ginsburg has a very good Hakdama here, a preface, and we will first give the Hakdama, the preface, the background, and also that will be a kind of a summary and review of the last 10 prakim, I would say, or 9, 10 prakim. So it will bring us back into the context of our learning, the general context. It's always good to do review, to bring us min haprat el haklal. We go from the klal to the prat, from the general to the detail, but we have to come back from the detail to the klal, to the full picture. So we will begin with that, and then we'll have a lot to talk about in terms of this coming Shabbos, Nachamu, and Tu B'Av, and Parshas Vayischanan. So we will do what we can. And of course, with God's help and the help of the Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe, that we are learning his Tanya, Kadisha. So, Perek Nun, the 50th chapter of the book of Beinonim, the book of normal people like us, hopefully. So, let's go quickly over this review, not every detail, but I will summarize Rabbi Ginsburg's summary, Alav Shalom. So, this chapter, Perek Nun, really concludes a series of chapters that discuss the different meditations or different intentions and different things to reflect upon that will awaken Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, the love of Hashem and the fear of Hashem, or the awe of Hashem. This chapter concludes that discussion because the chapters after, which means Nun Aleph, Nun Beis, Nun Gimel, 51, 52, 53, the last chapters of Tanya, of Likutei Amarim, of the first part of Tanya, are not a continuation to this kind of hisbonenus, of reflection that brings to Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Rather, it is a beginning of a new subject, which are some explanations, additional explanations to the words of the Zohar, why the Torah and mitzvahs are serving as an oil to the wick when we want to maintain just as we want to maintain the flame of the fire burning, and we don't want to allow the wick to burn away. We have to provide oil or wax that will come into the wick and enable to sustain and to maintain that fire, the flame of fire on this candle. So too, Torah and mitzvahs are like the shemen for the wick. Wick could be a human being, us, in order to be able to sustain and maintain and hold on to the light of Hashem within ourselves, the consciousness of divinity within ourselves, and the light of Hashem in the world. This will be the discussion from 51 to 53. But now we will go back to our chapter, which is the last chapter, which creates a shift in the discussion, and that's why we are making the review now, but it's still the end of it's a shift, at the same time it is part of the concluding part of this section. So, in the previous chapters of the Tanya, explains Rabbi Ginsburg, it was explained at length that on one hand, the main thing is not Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. The main thing is not what you feel towards God. Rather, if you learn Torah and you do mitzvahs in action. Why? Because it's only through that you can actually build the home to God. You can talk about making a home lit up and warm, this and that, this atmosphere, that atmosphere, but you have to rebuild the home. We have to build the building. And this home has to be done betachtoinim, in the lowest realm of creation, in the physical world. So the most important thing is you learn Torah and you do mitzvahs. And therefore, even if one has the biggest and deepest and loftiest intentions in the world, but he didn't learn Torah b'dibur, in speech, in the physical speech, he didn't do the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. If he didn't daven, if he didn't pray b'dibur in speech, he wasn't yotze, he didn't fulfill the mitzvah of tefillah. On the other hand, if one learned, let's say, studied and prayed bepar, in actuality, and he said the words even without kavana, without intention, without being able to be fully present, he is yatsa yidei chovaso b'di'evet. He is exempt. How do you say? He fulfilled his obligation b'di'evet. After the fact, he did fulfill his obligation. On the other hand, together with that, there is a very critical need, an important need, a necessary need, that the fulfillment and the actualization of Torah and mitzvahs will be done with love and with reverence. And this is also a cardinal intention of the divine will in terms of how to make a home for him in this world. So in order for the home of God that we are building in this world not to be like a body without a soul, not to be like a dark home, a cold home, rather it should be a beautiful home and it should shine and be warm, a lichtige dira, that is pleasant to dwell in it. This is done not necessarily cannot be accomplished only through the doing of God, the divine commands. This has to be accompanied with Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, with the love of God and the reverence, fear and awe of God. By this, we bring life, we reveal godliness, we reveal the divine in our doings of Torah and mitzvahs. And therefore, we learned in all these prakim, throughout these discussions, that love and awe of God are serving as the wings of our learning and our Torah and fulfilling the mitzvahs. So they can ascend and join the divine spiritual worlds in which godliness shines in a revealed manner. And through this, we will get to fulfill the goal, the divine goal of the revelation of God with all his might and all his essence and self, dafka here in the lowest realm of existence, in the true and complete Geula. And since this is the case, the Alter Rebbe began to explain and teach us what and how should we do practically in order to come to Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. Because the whole book of Tanya is based on the pasuk כי קרוב אליך דבר מאוד בפיך ובלבבך לעשותו. That means that Yiddishkeit and doing the divine commands and fulfilling the divine instructions is very close to us. And to explain well how it is close in a long and short way, Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach, as the Rebbe began in the beginning of Tanya, in Akdama. Now, when we got to the 40th, to the Mems, and specifically Mem Aleph, 41, chapter 41. There it was explained that the beginning of the divine service and its main aspect, its spine and its foundations, on what it stands, on its root, is to awaken in oneself, Kabbalah's all, the basic God-fearingness. The basic acceptance of the authority, the divine authority upon oneself, accepting the yoke of the divine will. This is a necessary beginning. Reshis Avodah, as the Alter Rebbe calls it in chapter 41. And this is the Ikar and the Yesod B'Shoresh. It's the main thing of Avodas Hashem, and it's the shoresh, the root and the foundation of Avodas Hashem, throughout, to all the levels that will accomplish further on in the experiencing the love of Hashem and closeness to Him. But this is the foundation, and also in different levels of reverence as well. So it all has to begin with minimal, with basic Yiras Shamayim. How do we get there? By reflecting on the fact that Hine Hashem Nitzav Alav, that God is standing upon each and every one and is well aware of every thought, speech, and action. And we need to remember that and not to fall asleep, forgetting it. And together there in the second half of 41, the Rebbe explained how to come to a minimal, the basic Avas Hashem, and how to include himself with the rest of the Jewish community. And from where do we get the power for all that? To awaken that basic love, awe of Hashem, and Kabbalah's all, accepting the yoke, the divine yoke upon ourselves, and awakening that basic love that we experience by expressing our relationship with Hashem through the wish to come closer to Him and to get to know Him. How do we get the strength? From where do we get the strength to direct our inner world in that direction? Especially in our times when we are bombarded with so many stimulations, challenges, information, and so on from other sides and from all sides. So every Jew has the power to accomplish this because we receive it from Moshe Rabbeinu. We receive it from Moses. From the original Moshe Rabbeinu and the Moses in each and every generation. Also, soul-wise, each and every Jew has a Moses inside. And based on all that, the power that the first Moses gave us, the power that every Rebbe gives us in every generation, every leader of every generation is permeating us with. And the power of Moses, the spark of Moses in each and every Jewish soul, that gives one the power to position himself with the basic fundamental Yiras Shamayim, fear of heaven, meaning fear doesn't mean to be shuddered and traumatized and scared to death. No, that's not fear of Hashem. It means to really revere His presence and to be aware of Him, and for various reasons to feel incomparability in terms of who he is and what I am. And that awakens awe. Then from chapter 43, the Alter Rebbe continued forward and explained how one should grow further up in Yiras Hashem and Avas Hashem. It's true that the beginning of the divine service and its foundation and its pillar is Kabbalas Ol. But we don't stay there. It's like, there are basics that the baby needs to have, and the baby needs to be. But if at the age of 15, the baby performs, the child performs the same way that he or she performed when they were a baby, then it's not acceptable. So the Reshis Avodah, the beginning of where we position ourselves in the beginning of the journey of coming closer and closer and becoming one with God, that is the basic fear of God and the basic love of God. But that has to grow, as a human being has to grow in all areas, functionally in terms of physically, emotionally, and mentally and spiritually and so on. And therefore, the Rebbe continues to guide us how to keep on and climbing upwards and to come to higher levels of Avas Hashem, of loving God. In Perek Mem Gimel 43, there is a general division to two kinds of Yira and two kinds of Ava. Yira Tata and Yira Ilah, and Ava Rabba and Ava Zuta. There is Yira Tata, which means the lower Yira, the Yira that comes from contemplating on the presence of God in this world and seeing His greatness in this world, just standing in front of a roaring ocean, that alone can awaken Yiras Hashem. But that's the Yira Tata, when we reflect on how through the world we see the presence of God. Then we have a higher Yira, how the world is completely insignificant, and it's an ayin completely in comparison with the divine yesh, with the divine reality. It's so insignificant. That's a higher Yira. And so too we have Ava Zuta or Ava Rabba. We have Ava from the world and Ava above the world. And these Ava Tivis, we learned that there is Ava Tivis, there is natural love, and there is love that comes out of intellectual reflection. Perek Mem Daled 44. The Rebbe begins to explain, the Rebbe explains the Isboinenus that we will bring to Avas Hashem. Now that he wants to build us up in our love of Hashem, in the Ava on the level of Nafshi Visicha. That we relate to Hashem we relate to our life. Like our nefesh, without the nefesh we cannot be alive. So we crave God like we crave life. Just as we want to be alive, so we want to have godliness, because He is our true life. And then we went to another kind of meditation, Kevara Dishtadel, because He is our true Father, like a son or a child that is completely, selflessly devoted to his parent, to love his father to the extent of Mesiras Nefesh. Like a child that is investing giving himself over for the benefit of his and the comfort of his father and mother, more than he cares for himself. And at the end of that chapter, the Rebbe added that we shouldn't suffice with such loves, but we should also reach Avas Olam. What is Avas Olam? Ava, love that comes as a result of our intellectual reflection on the greatness of Hashem in order to know God through the world and to see the glory of God in the world. and therefore to awaken through the mental meditation and mental study and mental reflection, to really invest our mind deeply into any matters that are helping us to increase our appreciation for God, and to awaken the love like flames of fire that is very passionate. In chapter 45, the Rebbe presents another path, another way. Od yesh derech yashar lifnei ish. Through awakening midas harachamim, the attribute of compassion in his own soul, meaning to awaken great compassion for his soul, for his own soul, and the divine spark that is contained in each and every soul, that is now in the prison of the body, and it subjected to all our experiences of being lost in the pursuits and in the passions and in the temptations of this world. And this mercy on the godliness in our soul can also awaken this love. Then in chapters 46 to 49 that we just concluded, the Rebbe explains the beautiful meditation, presents the beautiful meditation of kamayim apanim lapanim, that just as a face looks in the water, the reflection will reflect the face that is looking in. And so too, we should respond to God. And it's a natural response when we will realize how the King of Kings, this awesome King, is demonstrating such unlimited, infinite love, and for our sake, he lets go and puts aside, so to speak, all the higher worlds and even his infinite light, his own self-expression, in order to descend to us, to our lowest world, and to give us his Torah and his mitzvahs. And by this to enable us to become one with him, to marry us. Through this, his boinanus, the person's heart can be awakened and inflamed, to put aside everything that he is attached to in terms of emotionally, and to overcome all the obstacles, to give oneself to God completely, and to cleave totally to the path of Torah and mitzvahs. Now, this is where we got till now. Now we are beginning the last chapter of this discussion. In this chapter, the Rebbe is presenting and explaining a different kind of love, very high level of love, the highest in this realm, which is incomparably higher than all the previous loves that the Rebbe was describing, along with the meditations that awakened them. This unique, special love brings the person to close hanefesh mamash, to the state of his soul wishing to expire from his body. The Rebbe emphasizes that even if one does reach such exalted love, one is not allowed to remain in a state of close hanefesh, of expiration. Rather, after this big, tremendous inspiration, one has to awaken a reverse direction of kind of a service, which means to bring himself down, to remain, particularly stay and remain in the physical body, and here, down here in this physical world, to learn Torah, to do the mitzvahs, not because one desires it. In fact, we will find that one desires the opposite with this kind of love, to exit his body, to exit this limiting world. However, since this is the divine will, that's what he's doing. So this is in some ways a different kind of love, because explains Rabbi Ginsburg that unlike all the other loves that were explained by the Alter Rebbe, that type of love, all those types of love the Alter Rebbe explains, are more like milemala lemata, from up down. It's like they have the quality of chesed, the quality of water that goes from up down, which means that in that case the wish is not that the person expires and the character goes out of his kelim. The wish is that him and his nefesh, as it is in its existence in the body, will cleave to God, and that to God, godliness will shine in our soul. And therefore, the direct conclusion and outcome of such love is to cleave to God through Torah and mitzvahs. Because through Torah and mitzvahs, you can reach the highest in attaching yourself to God. I am not getting into explanation here that the Rebbe will explain, that will describe this special love of chapter 50, Nun, as the love that transcends other loves, like the transcending of gold over silver. All the other loves are like chesed. They are like silver, like water. More like milemala lemata, more like quiet, more like quiet and still, and more cool, like the nature of water, of chesed, of dveikus, of attachment, like what water does to flower, brings everything together. Like the wish of loving is to wish to bond, to attach, to connect. But then the love of chapter 50 is the love of gold, the love of fire. It's not, there is a short discussion here by Rabbi Ginsburg, it is not that it's the same fire that the Rebbe mentions on chapter 43. In chapter 43, the Rebbe also calls that love Kerish Pe'esh, like flames of fire, but this is still within the category of love like water. This is like fiery love. But here we're talking about different kinds, which is not love like water at all. This is love like fire. Like the difference between, as we go into the explanation, the difference between silver and gold. Meaning that in the previous kinds of love, the love like water and silver, milemala lemata, when a person wants godliness to be brought down into his existence, the wish is to remain in existence. And Elokus will come and permeate and illuminate my existence. In the Ava, in the love of chapter of Nun, a person reaches a condition in which his entire desire and yearning is that his soul will not remain where she is or where it is, because his body cannot contain such love, such unlimited love. Rather, a person's wish is that his soul will be completely released from the body and will ascend and be subsumed in divinity. And therefore the outcome of this love, the conclusion of this love of itself, is unlike the rest of loves, which is to cleave to God through Torah, the mitzvahs. Here, the conclusion of this love is to reach closer nefesh, to reach expiration, to reach the expiration of the soul from the body, to desire with his entire being to exit the limitations of the body and to be nullified and included and subsumed in divinity, in holiness. And it's interesting that Rabbi Yoshgacha Pratis, Rabbi Ginsburg, is bringing here Reb Reuven Dunin alav Shalom, who was my first mashpia and brought me to the Rebbe. And his yortzeit was Yud Aleph Mar Cheshvan. Was the yortzeit of Reb Reuven Dunin alav Shalom and Rebbe's his wife, Rebbe's and Rivka Dunin, Alea Shalom. Holy people. Also Reb Hillel Paracho. Reb Dunin alav Shalom, Reb Reuven, wasn't known for choosing words that were so refined and edel. He used to express himself sometimes in a brutal way, in a strong way, in a sharp way. So in his special languages, when he explained what he felt in the presence of the Rebbe, I was zoche to see a chassid that was burning with love to the Rebbe. And every time when he spoke about the Rebbe, I saw tears in his eyes. Love, you could see his heart palpitating with love to the Rebbe and his kashrus to the Rebbe. So he's quoting Reb Reuven saying, רציתי להיכנס מתחת לנעל של הרבי ולהיגמר שם לגמרי, שמכל הרובן הזה לא יישאר מאומה. He said, all I wanted was somehow to stick myself under the Rebbe's foot, under the Rebbe's shoe, which means to reach that level of bitul. ולהיגמר שם לגמרי, and there to completely be finished there, to find my end. I want to end myself right there under the shoe of the Rebbe. That was my wish. That from this entire Reuven, and Reuven wasn't a small person, will not remain anything. That was my wish. But then the Alter Rebbe says, this is the type of love we're talking about here now. The gold. It sparkles, it's fiery like gold, like fire wants to release itself from the wick, as it constantly wants to go up, 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 and we have to hold it down. That's this type of fire, of love. But when a person gets there, since the divine intention and will is not to exit the body, rather to remain in the body, and with the body to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs, therefore a person in that case, that person has to overcome this desire and this thirst and go down to fulfill his mission in the world, to make a home to God, blessed be him, in this lowest world. Now, as part of this preface of Akdama, the Rebbe Rabbi Ginsburg will make another, we will stop here, but Rabbi Ginsburg will make another comment that it looks like this is the highest love, the Ava Kerish Pe'esh, love like flames of fire, the way it will be described in our chapter, the greatest love. But there is another love that is even higher. And yes, most of the time, gold is more expensive than silver. But there is a very special silver, very, very, very bright, sparkly and shiny silver, called Kesef Mezukak Shiv'atayim, a silver that is purified 7 times. It's a special darga of silver that even transcends gold. So the Rabbi Ginsburg explained that this love that we are going to learn about, starting from next time, God willing, is the highest that the Beinoni can reach. But there is a higher level of love that the Tzaddik can reach, which is even higher than that. So that we will leave for next time.